At our lowest spot, we have Tina's Kaboom Bow. I think the real problem with this weapon is that it's the only really balanced weapon of all the mythic weapons, and so obviously it's the worst. You can only really shoot 5 shots at a time, and it has a really long reload time for those 5 shots. Along with that, in the state of Fortnite currently, the Rick is really hard to get around, which makes for really slow looting in the early game. Also, this weapon is a shell of the former Boombo, which was easily spammable using shotgun ammo and only did 100 damage. So, yeah, this weapon isn't very good, and it's really the only balanced mythic weapon, and that's why it's the worst. Okay, so our second lowest spot is the Deadpool dual pistols. On most people's lists, this would be the lowest spot, but I think they are better than most people think. When you get them at the yacht, you're guaranteed to have full shield because you can kill the henchmen with them and they give you health. Like, what? Also, these are one of the easiest mythic weapons to get, as the yacht's very, low in popularity, especially after Deadpool took it over instead of Meow schools. But the thing about these is that they're not very good outside of the yacht, as you really just get them for full shields and then you can drop them for something else in the vault. So yeah, that pretty much covers the Deadpool hand cannons. At our number 5 spot, we have Meow's Heavy AR. This weapon is really just a shell of its former self. I mean, the original one did 48 damage to the body and 96 damage to the head, while this one only does 44 damage to the body and 88 to the head, which 96 damage to the head on a full health player is crazy. So the 88 damage is really low compared to that, in my opinion. And the biggest thing about the Meow's AR is that it's by far the easiest weapon to get. You can just go to the box factory where no one goes. It's by the grotto, and yeah. And anyways, it's a great weapon to use, and it can really pack a punch if you know how to use it right. But the top 4 top it by a lot. Okay, so as I just said, right now is where we really take a big jump in popularity and effectiveness. And at our number 4 spot, we have the Grappler. The Grappler's overall just a great weapon. The thing that I think is insane about this thing is it's just good, better than anything we've ever really seen in every aspect that you really want from it. First off, we have very little movement in the Chapter 2 Season 2 map right now, and this thing really helped with it, with infinite uses, so you can just get around the map in a flash. Also, it has a really versatile game style and gameplay where you can play really aggressively with it or really defensively, depending. You can run away with this thing, or you can grapple up to someone's box and absolutely destroy them. Another thing about grappling up is actually this thing gives you free high ground. There's no point in trying if your opponent has the grappler, because they can just grapple up to you every single time and get high ground. It's crazy. It's free high ground. And as a bonus with this weapon is that it comes with Sky's AR, which you'll see where it comes in, further down the line, in the top 3, obviously. And yeah, this thing's crazy, infinite uses, and there's almost no circumstance where you don't want this against your opponent. Okay, and here's the surprise of the video. Now we have the Midas Drumgun. The Drumgun is probably the second best spray weapon in the game. It does 25 damage per shot, has a 40 bullet magazine, and has a fire rate of 10 bullets per second, which is all combined to have the second best DPS in the game too, at 250. I'm a bit biased because I'm a controller player, but this is amazing for jumping into an opponent's box and just spraying them down. And speaking of jumping into someone's box, the Drumgun is so viable right now in the meta, as there's no traps, there's nothing to defend from someone just jumping into your box like that and spraying. So that's really gives this a weapon an advantage over others. The drum gun also has low fall off and less bloom, which makes it better than you may think at medium range. A lot of the time, I use this thing as my AR and use a sniper for the longer range battles. I think this thing really shines when you're like 5 to 10 meters away, because I think the combination of high damage plus the fire rate and less bloom makes this gun insane at that range. Most of the time, when you're a little farther away, your enemy doesn't really expect for the drum gun to shred that much. Basically, the drum gun's insane. At the number 2 spot, we have the Brutus Minigun. This gun probably has the best stats in the game. It is 22 damage per shot and has a fire rate of 12 shots per second. And it has a DPS of 264 damage per second. The amount of pressure you can put on an opponent, heck, maybe even a squad, like, it's crazy. And if a person doesn't see you with a minigun, this gun can shred them to pieces, bro. It can take off so much health. Their health bar is pretty much gone instantly. Also, the pull-out time and cooldown time are unimaginably low. So even if your minigun has to cool down or pull out, it doesn't take very much time to keep pressure on an opponent. The insane cooldown time and pull-down time are really what makes this thing shred in close quarters. Like, you can almost instantly pull out this weapon and start shooting the minigun. And when you are in a position to be hitting your shots, this will kill your enemy so fast. Another thing with this weapon is that I think it has better range and less bloom compared to its purple and legendary counterparts. This means that the gun is also more viable in longer range situations and is pretty much an all-around gun. But it gets topped out by our number 1 spot. And now for our number 1 spot, you guessed it, it's Sky Scar. I think the most crazy thing about Sky Scar is its fire rate of 6 shots per second. It fires so fast for an AR, and with 37 damage per shot, it gets a DPS of 222. This gives this thing a huge advantage over the regular old Gold Scar, as its DPS is only 198, so you really can't kill a full health player in 1 second. This is huge when you consider jumping into someone's box with this thing, because you can clean up your opponent in less than 1 second, also giving them no time to react. For context, you're in someone's box shooting 6 shots per second, and all of them can hit for 37 damage. Like, that's crazy. Plus, this thing's paired with the Grappler, which we covered at number 4. Also, for me, this puts me at an advantage over the Drumgun and Minigun, because the Scar is really effective at more than just one range. This thing's a laser. It can kind of be argued for the Minigun, but this still cannot compare to the Scar at medium to long distances. I think the Minigun and the Drumgun have way too much bloom to be really effective at more than just close or maybe medium range. Also, I'm not saying that this thing is better than a minigun or drumgun at close range. I'm just saying the Scar can hang better at close range than a minigun and drumgun can hang at long range. So yeah. And finally, I think having the diversity in the Scar can give you an option to have another precious inventory slot, because you can use this thing as an AR and an SMG most effectively out of the loot pool in the game right now. So, that's our list.